right, good morning, everyone. Welcome to today's Disrupt webinar. We have invited Fabian Vogelsteller from LUKSO to talk about reverse ICO. During the course of the event, if you have any questions, please feel free to join our WhatsApp group, Bitcoin and Crypto Assets. You can scan the QR code using your camera on your phones. And post-event, if there are any questions, you can continue to share there because Fabian's already in the group and he will answer them.
LUKSO in the Reversible ICO today, in this very early morning here in Germany. So kind of like in the last few years, or at least when I joined the blockchain space, which was in 2013, everything was talking about tokens, about blockchain actually. So every time was like Bitcoin, and then there's the next better Bitcoin, and everything is about Bitcoin and whatever the next blockchain is coming. This really changed basically in 2017 when tokens became a thing, and when ICOs became a thing, and when all of these the token mania, let's say, kind of like kicked off. And that was due to a standard I proposed in November 2015 that kind of made it very easy for people to make any kind of tokens. And that's, for the better or worse, allowed a lot of people to raise a lot of money, and also kind of revolutionized in a way the whole crypto space, because now it's about tokens a lot. I mean, we have research fields called token economics. We have academia looking in this, and tokens as a tool to interact as a monetary system, as a protocol, is kind of like the standard we see today. So this kicked off this market, as you probably all know. We had, I think I made this calculation sometime in December 2019, and it was $12 billion only sitting in tokens. And there was the crypto winter, even though there was even more winter coming after that. But it's a very big deal. And today I want to talk about the reversible ICO that we have running currently, and that is a new form and a new concept around ICOs itself. I mean, ICOs itself, I mean, I know there's a lot of criticism, especially in the recent years. Before, ICOs were the best thing that happened, and then ICOs were like the only place for scams. But ICOs have a huge benefit, and the fact that you kind of have an automatic conversion, that you basically can go send Ether and get instantly your asset back, which you can then do whatever you want with, where you have 24/7 markets, global transferability and real-time settlement. That's a huge advantage. Try to do that with a notary. I mean, it's very complicated doing this way. On the other hand, there were problems that I saw in the recent, or especially in the high times of the ICO, is that people, for example, had these lock-ins. They went into the ICO. Once they were in, they were basically staying in. And sometimes it happened that you participated in ICO because everybody participated without that you really read the website, or without that you really even understand the project fully. And then you might be locked into something that you actually didn't want to invest in. So it also led, on the other hand, to scams, because there's no repercussion from the investors. They have no control over it anymore, or a ability to influence the project in any way. And that kind of like led to people scamming, and this led to projects changing the direction or their mind, or like thinking Lambo is better than working, and problems like this. And the idea of the reversible ICO is actually to work and to help solve these problems. And I think what we on the one hand need, and this is also what regulators want, is we want investor protection. We want to have more safety when you invest. We also want to have more increased project responsibility. There should be a balance between the project, especially over the internet, right? Especially over different jurisdictions. We want to have the ability that the project has some kind of recourse, or there's some kind of responsibility tied to it. Ideally, that's through the money. And I think what was really important for me also is that the system should have the personal choice. So if you have a system where you need to vote in a community, or where you need to vote for or wait for an audit company to to show up some results, then you're depending on third parties to make decisions for you. And in that case, it's actually very problematic because maybe there is a risky moment and you need to get your assets back, or you change your mind, but the rest of the group thinks differently. Then you have no way to get out if you would need to require a voting system, for example. So the personal choice was kind of like the important aspect for me. And that makes it also different to other proposals like the DAO ICO from Vitalik, where always this voting is involved. And I think this leads to better investor protection. Can't see my slide. And how does the Reversible ICO solve that? Yeah, before we get there, let's talk quickly about basically LUKSO and what is LUKSO and why I'm doing it. So LUKSO is basically a blockchain dedicated to the new digital lifestyle, how I call it. And this is basically, the idea is to move blockchain applications beyond finance, to focus on applications and use cases that are interesting to probably the rest of the world, which currently is not in blockchain. If we think about the 1 billion people on Instagram, or if we think about all of these creative people out there, they're barely that techie or that nerdy that they can interact with blockchain properly. For them, it's something they don't understand. I really like the saying that blockchain is everything you don't understand about money combined with everything you don't understand about computers. And this is very true. And I think we have to move this technology towards a level of ease of use that actually ideally should exceed Web 2.0. And I think that's what it can do, because the internet as we know it today is pretty much, it's a hack. You know, password logins, for example, is a hack. This is not the ideal. Why would somebody has to store your user data somewhere on a server? Why do you have to authenticate yourself against every account or every service you use again and create a new account? Why do you have to have 50 profiles and fill them all with the same data? There's actually no point in doing that, but it's the way of how the internet works today. The idea of LUKSO is actually not only to target and create a blockchain that is dedicated to some new kind of use cases, but to also come up with new use cases. And there's some very interesting ones, especially when you're in the field of fashion. There's something called purely digital fashion. Not sure if you've heard about that, but that means that you have 3D clothes that actually don't physically exist and probably never will physically exist. 3D clothes that you only wear either in an Instagram post or dressing your VR avatar or dressing your computer game. It's these kind of new type of collectibles that are not only interesting to gamers like CryptoKitties, but they're interesting to actually the 51% rest of the population in the world, which is the female audience. That are interesting to the fashion crowd. This is where the money is and where the luxury is. And we have now even big brands looking and trying digital fashion things out in various ways. So this is probably a complete new market that will be very big. And that is something we see LUKSO being like the base layer for that. Because digital fashion as a 3D object is nice, but with the blockchain, it becomes a ownable, it becomes a real thing. It becomes a scarce thing. And that's actually the important aspect which is missing right now. Universal profiles, I talked about that. We are currently in the internet, all spread all over the place and have thousands of logins, same as for companies. And I'm talking here very specifically about public profiles, which is basically what makes our internet reputation. But we also want to have identities for physical objects, for example. We want to basically transcend those physical objects into the digital realm. We do have that already with phones, or like our companions, right? They are digital by design. They are digitally owned. Even today, we are at the degree that when somebody steals your phone, it's basically worthless besides the parts you can take of it because you can't reinstall it anymore. We don't have that for other valuable objects. We don't have that for other physical valuable objects. And we're also moving towards a world where digital play spaces, and I'm specifically talking about virtual play spaces, and I'm really equipped with that in VR. And that this is actually something that will be massively impacting society over the next 10 years. And sports will be obviously the same. It will be completely driven. The esports of the future will be virtual esports. It will be VR driven. And in this kind of world, digital assets and your digital life and everything around it, including the digital fashion, is extremely relevant and is extremely important. And we're seeing this converging of fashion and lifestyle and gaming, especially fashion and gaming, which was never really touched. That we see this now merging. And that's exactly the intersection where the LUKSO network sits, where we want to start this network. It's an EVM blockchain, so it means it runs the Ethereum protocol under the hood. It is not the Ethereum mainnet, to be clear. It's the Ethereum protocol. That's where I come from. I have been part of the Ethereum Foundation for many years. Besides ERC20, I also built the first Web3 browser, and I built Web3.js. This is a developer tool, which basically almost 90% of all developers use today in the blockchain space. And is the one of how most people build the dApps. I also created the Ethereum provider standard, which is the little interface between a dApp and the Ethereum blockchain or any other EVM blockchain. It's basically how a browser provides an Ethereum node to an application. And so I have been on the forefront on defining these kind of first developed tools and standards and user interfaces. And with LUKSO, this is what bringing one step further, defining this now for an audience that is not technical first, making it easy to use and actually bringing a whole set new of users into blockchain and a whole set new of use cases as well. In the following, I will describe a little bit about the reversible ICO, and to do that, you have to understand what LUKSO is. So LUKSO is the native cryptocurrency of the LUKSO blockchain. The LUKSO blockchain is planned to start around spring 2021. We might even start that earlier. We're currently working on the mainnet test network, running a 100-batch BFT consensus algorithm. And what we are doing, or what you're getting in the reversible ICO right now, if you participate, is you get LUKSE. So the E obviously stands for Lux on Ethereum. And LUKSE is basically what lets you participate in the reversible ICO. That's what you get back. That what also allows you to reverse. And LUKSE will migrate to the native Lux on the LUKSO blockchain once the mainnet starts. So in simple terms, the reversible ICO is basically buying over time. Instead of basically, in simple terms, an ICO is I send Ether in, I get a token back, which has exactly the problems we spoke about before. In the reversible ICO, it's more like vesting. It's like you put Ether in, and then you're buying over a specific period of time. In our case, it's 8 months. And that will run from June 18th to February 21. So during this time, you're buying whatever Lux amount you are reserving. And you're buying linear, exactly like in this graphic. And that gives you the ability to kind of rethink your choice and to always return the not bought Lux yet, the ones which are still only reserved, and get your Ether back. So it's basically a slow participation, we could call it like that. So basically, we have on the reversible ICO is set in different stages. You have an initial stage of 22 days, which we are in right now. This is basically a phase where nobody is buying, where it's simply a allocation. So you can go in, you can go out, nothing happens. And then we have these different months. I mean, they're called stages in the smart contract process. And each stage has a different price increase. So there is an interest to go in early, because otherwise you would wait until the last month and only then go in. So here we have basically these 8 months where you have an advantage being early in. And during this time, you're linear buying, and you could at any point in time choose to either revert, either buy more if there's still some Lux available in the smart contract, or revert by sending your still locked Lux back to the smart contract and get your Ether out. So it's kind of like a buying over time / vesting in a smart contract using math to solve that. I guess there will be a few questions around the details here, but like we can do this after in the questionnaire. But yeah, that's the basic concept about the reversible ICO. So it's currently running. We actually will very likely today upgrade the smart contract because we want to adjust the price. So if somebody wants to participate, wait a few days. There's still like actually 12 days left until we start the buy phase, so there's no rush. And the idea is kind of the idea is that obviously we're not in the high times of the ICO, so the kind of storm on ICOs is not as strong as it was in the past. But the idea is that you get the investors who believe in the project, who want to be with us on this journey for the long run, who believe that the vision we are creating and the things we have planned to build are the future. And it's not for the flipper, right? The one who wants to just make like his 10x, then he has to go to whatever like scam coin and flip there, or go to exchanges and trade there. But given the reversible ICO and its nature, the exchange price of LUKS is obviously not fluctuating as extreme either, because it's kind of following the price on the reversible ICO. Yeah, but this is, for now, that's kind of it. We will be releasing the website likely today. We will do this reversible ICO upgrade. And if you're interested then you can participate joining on LUKSO.network on the website, or on rICO.LUKSO.network, which is the exact domain. For anybody from the US or mainland China, we do have to exclude you. I do have to say that because of your regulation. All right, that was everything from me. There's no clapping in Zoom. I know it's super weird.
I think we might have a question coming in on WhatsApp. Just saw few people typing.
Here.
Right, we have the first question. The question is, how is the current rICO interest? Does it make sense to list already the LUKSE token if you run an reverse ICO? Current pricing of LUKSE is below of rICO offering. Third question is, mid-June, the rICO will finish the purchase phase. Isn't it better to see price above rICO offer to attract more people into it?
Yeah, so
3 questions there.
Good point. We chose to make a spotlight program and gave a very special deal to KuCoin users. And now we have a secondary market. So LUKS is traded currently on KuCoin. That's actually an interesting, I'm not sure if it's a problematic thing, but it's definitely an interesting dynamic between a secondary market and a smart contract that has a fixed price. We have seen that the market is not responding well to the price differences. There's also the problem that when we started the reversible ICO, that the price of Ether went up, and the reversible ICO is set in Ether. So what we have figured is that's actually better if we are able to adjust the price in the reversible ICO. The math of the reversible ICO actually allows it very nicely. That's why we are currently thinking about migrating the smart contract, where we set a lower price. What's also really interesting to see, I mean, there's some very interesting dynamics. The market seems to value the ability to access their LUKS or their assets higher than risks. For example, the reversible ICO gives you a lot of safety, right? Because you have the reversibility over a long time. At the same time, you don't have access to your LUKS instantly. They only unlock over time because you're only buying them over time. And people seem to be, instead of paying a premium for the safety, they're actually more willing to pay a premium to access it instantly. So they actually want to have the rICO price cheaper than the exchange price, which is a very odd dynamic and seems unlogical, but it seems how the market sees it. So that's why we are thinking of restarting the rICO at a lower price. Also with the ability, this also gives us the ability to add some functionality like adopting the price or adjusting the price, which is important, especially in times of ether fluctuations that can be sometimes severe. I mean, we have to see how it's going in the next months. But yeah, the secondary market as of now is definitely a bit tricky, and therefore, obviously, the interest in the reversible ICO has been low. But we haven't really pushed marketing much because we had first to observe what's happening and how the market is reacting to it. And the reaction was not that strong. That's exactly why we are thinking of redoing this now. So if you want to participate in the reversible ICO, it's definitely better to wait a few days. In terms of buy phase, actually what happens is the purchasing only starts from the 18th of June on. So you're linear, like we see in this slide. So you're linear buying only from the 18th of June to the 21st of February 2021. So currently nobody has bought anything. So basically people just have locked like some ether in a smart contract that they can get out at any point in time. That's what happened so far.
Awesome. Thank you, Fabian. We have another question, and this one's from Katie. You mentioned 3 problems of ICOs: investor protection, increased project responsibility, and personal choice. How does LUKSO solve the above problems?
Yeah, so that's actually more the solutions than the problems. The problems were the one on the other slide. But how does it solve it is exactly because you have this ability to buy over time, or you're basically buying only over time. First, you have the choice to get out at all times. That means you're not at risk with your assets 100%. You're at risk with your assets from 0 to 100% in 8 months, which is pretty slow. On the other hand, there's more project responsibility because if, for example, the project is not doing well or they want to run off with the money, then every investor can go out with the part of the ether they haven't bought tokens yet. That means the project would instantly has no funding anymore except what they got until this point in time. So there is more pressure on the project and there is more responsibility from that side as well. So kind of like a ICO 22-day scam is impossible, right? Personal choice means because I can simply send my LUKS back. And the way of how we have built it is that you can basically participate with the reversible ICO with any standard wallet that allows you to transfer tokens and set your gas limits manually and a data field. So we do have added this restriction that you have to add this data for the first contribution you're doing until you're whitelisted, because we want to prevent people sending ether from an exchange. Because the smart contract would assign the ownership of the LUKS to the smart contract of the exchange or the address of the exchange, and then nobody has access. But yeah, in the ideal scenario, it's as simple as basically sending ether, and if you want to get out, sending LUKS back. It's that it doesn't require a custom interface. It only requires your wallet and the blockchain, and that's actually the nice thing. This is really how ICOs were in the past, in the early days, and that was nice.
Perfect. We have another question. Why do you think fashion and gaming and not finance are the main markets for LUKSO?
So point is, currently everybody talks about DeFi. What I have learned, and what I guess I was wrong was right a few times, is that everything which is right now the big hype is not likely the big hype tomorrow. If you want to know what's coming next, you have to think ahead. You have to think what's changing right now. I mean, VR, for example, is a very good example. A few years back, I mean, I have VR since 4 years. A few years back, people would have said, "Oh, this was just a fad. Who wants to play with something like this?" And today it becomes extremely apparent that VR is the next frontier, actually, a massive frontier, because the ability and the things that it allows you to do. what I'm interested in is what is the next set of blockchain users and what is the next set of blockchain applications, and where is the fun, and where is the creativity, and where are the cool things will happen, and where are the cool kids going. And that's exactly in this, what we call the new digital lifestyle space. We have actually written a more than 100 pages white paper that really goes into detail on this. And interestingly enough, there are some projects now popping up with similar interests that actually copy our white paper and that really like basically copy our vision one to one. So we are onto something that is not yet big, but this is becoming big. And this is really what's interesting. But because what we are building up is something we have to build first. If it would be big now, we would be too late. What we are building up is big when we are fully ready, when the network is live and so on. And we see that in all the angles. I mean, digital fashion is a topic that is massively incoming and that requires blockchain in its essence. And here we are talking about markets that might be bigger than anything we have seen so far. If you look at Fortnite, they only sold emojis and skins, and they made 3 billion in profit. It took Amazon 15 years to get to that point. And it took Epic Games 1, because the demand for digital assets is just so high if you do it in the right way. The problem with blockchain right now is, and that's also, I think, what hinders it to go mainstream is, first, it's too complicated. And second, it's all focused on finance. I mean, finance is, don't get me wrong. I mean, I have proposed that standard, which like kicked all of this DeFi. And I love DeFi, the idea of protocols and automated financial tools, independence and so on. This is all great. And I'm happy to see this evolution. But that's not the tools that would bring us to mainstream. That's not the tool which you can go out and tell your friend around the corner, hey, this is so amazing that, you can put your stuff in a CDP and self-loan yourself something with complicated processes that will not make your mom excited, But there are use cases. There is the things that you can digitally own things, that you can physically own things, that you have the ability to own the $2,000 handbag purchase you just made and receive an experience like a VIP that you don't receive right now, because the moment you walk out of the store of a luxury company, you can't even prove anymore that it's real. They probably, even if you would turn right back from the staircase and go back and say, hey, I want to sell it to you back again, they say, no. We're not sure if you just exchange it in front of the door. And that's exactly what basically the digital identification of these items would allow. You can now prove the authenticity, and you cannot replicate it because the ownership can only be existing once. And that's the beauty of the blockchain. And use cases go beyond that. I mean, for example, if you think about tokenization, everything around in tokenization fields right now is about finance, right? Everybody who makes the tokens, the token needs to have a monetary value, it needs to be traded, and it represents some kind of asset. But the real tokenization, in my opinion, that's going to be big in the next few years, is tokenization about reputation, about community, where the token represents my interest in a group or my stake in a certain community, where it might not be directly translatable to money, but it might be directly translatable to access or to benefits I get from that. And that's on the end, the stronger impact. And this is exactly how we run the web today. I mean, our Twitter followers, our Instagram followers, our likes on a post, that's what we really value, right? Because that gives us reputation, that gives us trust. And blockchain allows us to translate that really well. And it allows us to transcend that across platforms. And that's kind of the big deal. So the focus on this network is for these kind of audiences, these kind of use cases. And the most important piece for that is standardization of the core tools. Like ERC20 has been one standard that kicked off a whole economy. There are other standards that are required, like universal profiles and like new protocols for these kind of tokenization tools. And these standards working in concert, which is really important as well, that will enable such an economy.
We have 4 more questions. I'll kick off with the first one. How much is the new rICO price? Do you have any insights on that?
We can't tell. Yeah, so we will announce it very soon. There's still a few calls we have to do and a few things we have to solve, but we will likely go with something that is around the exchange or lower because of the investor mind, which is kind of like illogical.
All right.
But yet it is, first it's still higher than the private sale people paid, and also then obviously then KuCoin. So it is an increase overall, but it's a slower increase. But with the ability to adjust the price, which is also functionality that was missing right now, we can also adjust things long term. So in case, you know, Ether price goes immensely up and we would have to adjust the Ether price down, we can always reimburse the early contributors with LUKS in order to compensate for this change.
Okay. Second question, the BaFin approved the rICO. How could you modify the rICO besides the vesting time periods without compromising the goodwill of the regulators?
Basically what we do is we will ask everybody to return their LUKS. We basically ask everybody to go out and then they go into the new one. That's what. And because right now there's not too many people in the reversible ICO committed or whitelisted, that's still a doable thing. So basically we're just restarting it with the same parameters on a different address. That's how the upgrade will work, likely.
Okay.
And concerning the BaFin approval, so basically we checked it with the regulators. There was a very long process. We checked that we can sell LUKS, and because we are in Germany, we are in a very regulated jurisdiction, and we not only want to do it right, do it legal, and do it safe, but we also want that this is a sustainable project and this is not just to make a quick run on money and then whatever disappear in the Caribbean. So yes, we took a lot of money and time to get this approval and to go through all of these hoops and processes. And we really we're very lucky actually that and also I really have to praise here the German regulators for being that forward thinking in allowing such a process, and also seeing that this is actually here to improve things. The approval itself is not an approval. It's actually a check that it is in accordance with German security or supervisory law. And that obviously means not that the BaFin is endorsing the sale or that they're endorsing the sale of LUKS. This is a complete, I mean, they haven't checked our creditworthiness, for example, technically speaking. They only have checked is the sale on this form and of this asset with supervisory law. And they agreed to yes, which is very good. But again, you know, we haven't done the process with the SEC, and we haven't done the process with the other more restrictive countries. Therefore, we have to exclude these, especially the East and the West, exactly in the middle and up and down. They're more relaxed about that. Yeah, but the idea is also that when the reversible ICO will work out, and technically already works out, obviously we need the traction behind it. If it works out and it shows that's a better way of investing, it's a better mechanic, then it can bring more safety to the ICO space. So the next time we see a gold rush in the blockchain space and people use a reversible ICO, there will be far less scams, and there will be more safety to projects. It seems right now there's a lot of more like coin flippers and low volume investors around, and that's kind of a bit problematic because they don't want to have to lock up times and so on. Even though all good projects before had a lockup time. If you invested in a project, sometimes you have to wait 2 years before you even could access any of your tokens, and there's no reversibility. So the rICO is, in my opinion, the better tool, but we have to also show and see that and prove that for ourselves.
I think there was a follow-up question also that you already responded, I assume, but just so is it rather a consent, yeah, rather than an approval?
It's, if I'm not sure how you would call that. It's I mean, so for example, if you have a prospectus and you go to the regulator, they can approve or deny this prospectus. In this case, it's a no action letter with a legal basis. I'm not sure how you would call that. They basically just checked if it's accordance with German supervisory law. But still, it was a very long process, and the idea is also that if we have those kind of standardized checks, that ideally next time it goes faster for others. Because obviously it cannot be that the regulators have now to one-on-one check everything for a year, you know, before somebody can start, because it's obviously very inefficient for a startup. So these things, and ideally, if we can show the reversible ICO is a safe mechanism, and it's done this way, and it has the audit, then if you use it this way, you're good to go. Obviously, it still depends on what kind of asset you're selling, right? That's another check you have to do. Yeah.
Awesome. Thank you, Fabian. We're almost close to the end of the session, but we have 2 more questions, which I think you can still take. The first one goes like this. If rICO investors can withdraw their cash at any time during 8 months, doesn't that mean you cannot secure the funds you need upfront?
Yeah, we're not securing the funds upfront, absolutely not. So basically what they do is so if you look at this chart, basically everything in the darker area is the ether we could access. Everything in the lighter area is ether we cannot access. So yes, we have only access to the ones which are already flown to us.
Okay, and the last question, how does it work to offer different tokens under the umbrella of LUKSO?
So I mean, LUKSO, I'm not sure if I fully understand the question, but LUKSO is basically a blockchain, a programmable blockchain using the Ethereum virtual machine. So that means you can program anything you want, and you can deploy any smart contract and deploy your own tokens and so on in the future. Is this a question about regulation or about the technology? Because regulation, I can't answer that. That probably depends on what asset you are having. So the thing is also, and we have to be aware that the potential of the Ethereum virtual machine and a programmable blockchain is almost unlimited. So you can program whatever you want. For example, people think right now Ethereum is all about tokens. That's not true. That's like 0.1% of the potential of what you can do on Ethereum. Ethereum has other problems. You know, for example, it's expensive and it's slow. The community is very much focused on DeFi, for example. That's more exclusive towards these new kind of use cases. But technically speaking, you can do anything on Ethereum. So can you do anything on an EVM blockchain like LUKSO? It's really interesting because when we talked about tokens back in 2015, and like we knew you can make tokens, and we knew it's a simple thing, and people wanted it, but it was like the least interest to do that because it was like just such a simple use case. And now everybody only talks about tokens, and it created a whole like academic research field. But the potential is way higher. So you could build reputational systems, right? You could build, you could make DAOs for creative communities. You could create a decentralized brand in the first place. I mean, one of the biggest things, and when we are staying in the fashion world, and LUKSO is not only about fashion, it's really about how we call it the new creative economies. It's about all kind of creatives, like influencers, YouTubers. You could think of Kim Kardashian issuing tokens to her followers. You could have a complete different connection of VIP or musician to his fans. It could be also used for esports. It's more these creative fields, and it's about creating the building blocks. And why we have a separate network has actually 4 reasons, or mainly 3 reasons. One is scalability. That's a technical reason. Because the Ethereum network is full and it is expensive. And ETH 2.0 is great, but it's not here yet. And even if it would be here, it's not enough scalability. So there will be a natural tendency towards distribution on separate networks. And here comes the second reason, which is even more important. It's the focus of the community and the interest of the community that binds this network together and that binds this community together. If you are thinking about what really binds Ethereum together, it's because Alex wrote on the website, build unstoppable applications. He wrote that sentence and he really just made it up. And if you look on Ethereum today, what was built so far and what is built today is basically exactly fitting that sentence. It's about unstoppable applications that do new kind of things. But it's not really inviting. It feels more rebel, and it's not really inviting to any kind of more commercial use cases, or even for different audiences which are not trying to disrupt the banking system. Therefore, the community interest is a different one. And the third one is the standardization process. I created the first smart contract standard that kicked off a whole standardization process, and we have now over 800 ERCs, and we have like basically almost a standard war where we have different parties competing about the next best security token standard, for example. But when you start a network from scratch, we have the ability to lead the conversation around those standards. The initial building blocks that we propose that also work in concert would be happily adopted by everybody who's coming on LUKSO. That's one thing. And the other thing is that obviously with a fresh network, we have the ability to create different incentives to grow the ecosystem. We have the ability to pay for transaction fees for some time and for specific use cases. We can have transaction relay services. We can way better establish the ecosystem over a long time. We can make a big brand or a company that wants to participate and use the network for their users. We can give them or sell them a certain amount of fixed LUKS that they can now use to pay for their users' transactions, which can increase and improve the user experience. Sadly, Ethereum, the cake is distributed in Ethereum. You can't do that anymore. So that's another reason why it's really complicated to start something from scratch. And I think one of the strong reasons, if you really think about it, and I'm in the blockchain space since 2013. I mean, why are many of those blockchains so successful? Is because they were their own network that had their own community that could grow with them. And if you want to create blockchain use cases in this new digital lifestyle space, which is completely, to some degree new, to some degree it improves what's currently existing, you need to give these people their own network to start together and to grow into those use cases together, to make these companies see, okay, an ecosystem, a decentralized ecosystem is actually something that you want to be part of. And that's actually unbiased, it's unowned, and something we can all use to create innovation, you know, between our users, our communities, and so on. So growing together with this network, which also involves a value growth, is on the end really the essence of why any of these blockchains took off. And if you don't have that, you cannot create the same amount of traction. You cannot create the same amount of interest. And a lifestyle ecosystem as such might not happen because of that. So there are a few reasons.
Awesome. Okay, I think we can take this as the final question before we wrap up the session. Isn't rICO similar to a rolling book of indication of interest without commitment until the final purchase date with some lock-in price set monthly?
Sorry, where's the question?
It's in the WhatsApp group, and it says, isn't rICO similar to a rolling book of indication of interest without commitment until the final purchase date with some lock-in price set monthly?
Could be. I'm not a financial person, so technically, yeah. So basically, you are not buying anything. So what you're doing is you're creating a vault in the Reversible ICO. From this vault, the Reversible ICO can automatically convert your Ether on a rolling basis, which is really per block on Ethereum, into LUKS. And you just, by emptying the vault, you can stop that commitment. And you haven't bought nothing before. You basically just have put Ether in there. And that's like your wallet. Yeah, so it's buying over time. And the price is changing monthly. Exactly, yeah. So basically the amount of LUKS you can get for, but it's not changing for you. So for you basically, and this is probably something, maybe we have to make this more clear, your price for which you buy LUKS is depending on when you go in. So it's not that you're buying over time and you're paying these higher prices. For you, it's relevant when you go in. That sets for you the amount of LUKS that you reserve. So there is a benefit to be in early, yeah.
Okay. We have a few more questions, Fabian, but I shall leave it to you to respond in the WhatsApp group if that's okay, as we are almost out of time. All right, so I think that was that. Thank you once again for the great presentation and for answering all the questions. We'll of course be uploading this session today on YouTube, and we'll be sharing it across our channels. So yeah, great. That's pretty much from my side. Thank you once again, Fabian, for taking the time and explaining LUKSO and the reversible ICO. We wish you good luck, and yeah, keep us posted.
Thank you guys, and thanks for everybody watching.